Starting off, Spanish was pretty hard for me to learn. Everyone, I imagine, feels like they talk really, really fast. And coming from the MTC, all my teachers were Americans, so I had that accent in my mind. I thought I was good. Going to Honduras, I already knew Spanish, and I get there, and I don't know anything. And my companion didn't really know English, so there's a lot of times communication problems. That was hard at first. Um, but as time went on, Spanish got easier. You have a lot of fun times though with Spanish. I remember one time I was in the city in Tegucigalpa and there's tons of hills. And so we were walking up this really steep hill and I was trying to tell my comp to carry me. But there's a word in Spanish that's very similar to carry, but it's a cuss word to poop on someone. And so we were going up the hill, and instead of telling him to carry me, I told him to poop on me in a very vulgar way. And so you'll have moments like that, just learning the language and making a fool of yourself. But all in all, it's fun. In Honduras, instead of talking in tú, they talk in vos, which is kind of different, but if you learn your grammar pretty well, it's easy to pick up on. And you don't even need to worry about it because you'll just be talking in usted the whole time. That's the more formal way to talk to people. Um, in the south of Honduras, instead of finishing the words, a lot of times we'll just say, especially if there's an S at the end. So let's say, so if I'm saying you, or if I'm saying more, if you want more, I'd say, ¿Quieres más? And so, I mean, at first it's kind of funny, but then you get used to it and maybe you'll actually start doing it. But you'll have a lot of fun with the language. And Hondurans, they also, a lot of times with the S, if it's in between different other letters, they'll make it a J. Like, and if I want to say what happened, ¿Qué pasó? Like, ¿Qué pasó? It's not that distinct, but there's a lot of people you can find that say it like that.
One blessing I had from the mission was the opportunity to learn Spanish, which is a beautiful language that I love. It was a little difficult at first to get a grip on. I remember when I was in high school, we had my high school offered Spanish or German, and I really wanted to take German. My grandpa spoke German, and I just thought it was a cool language. That's what I wanted to take. But my dad told me, no, you should take Spanish. It's going to be a more useful language for you. And I remember telling my dad, no, it's not. I really want to take German. And he said, no, you need to take Spanish. I told him, I said, you watch. I'm going to get my mission call, and it's going to be to Germany, and I'm going to be speaking Spanish. And he said, all right, I'll take you up on that bet. And I remember when I opened my mission call and said where I was going, my dad leaned in and said, first thing he said to me was, well, hey, Jake, sounds like you're not going to be speaking German, are you? Which was funny to me, but he was right. High school Spanish was definitely a blessing. I couldn't speak Spanish to save my life, but I came in with at least a basic knowledge of verb conjugation and things like that. Spanish it's really nice because once you can get a handle on conjugations and genders and stuff like that, it makes speaking it a lot easier. One thing to remember when you're learning Spanish is it's all with the tongue. When you speak English, it's very guttural, kind of back here in the throat. But when you speak Spanish, it's all up front in the mouth. And I remember one thing our MTC teacher had us do is he would have us read scriptures, and we'd put a pencil in our mouth. I don't know how that helps, but I know it helped me at least with pronunciation. Another thing that really helped my pronunciation, it was a blessing in disguise because I really did not enjoy it at the time. There were 4 guys from my district in the MTC that we all went to the same mission. And of the 4 of us, I was the only one who had a trainer that didn't speak English. Most of my companions were from Central America, and most of them didn't speak English very well. And so, but the other three guys that I came to the mission with all had gringo trainers. And I remember when I was getting trained, I was so jealous of that and almost resentful because I was like, these guys have it so much easier. If they don't know what they're doing at the store, or when they're talking to someone, they can just turn to their companion and ask him in English. And I didn't have that because my companion didn't speak English. And so it led to a lot of struggles at the beginning. But I noticed that as I progressed through the mission, my Spanish was a little better, at least my pronunciation, just because I had companions from Central America through the whole first year of my mission, which, like I said, blessing in disguise, because at the time I was not happy about that, but it really did help my Spanish to be a lot better. One thing that is super nice about Spanish is English is weird because we have all these different sounds and silent letters, and it's just weird. In Spanish, every letter is pronounced, and every letter only has one pronunciation. So I still remember someone telling me that English was weird because if you look at Abraham, it has 3 A's, and all 3 A's make a different sound. But in Spanish, that is not the case, which is really nice, especially when you're learning it, because even if you can't speak Spanish, and even if you don't really know what anyone's saying, you can read Spanish because it is always going to say the same thing. And so I would recommend relying on that. I know that I relied very heavily on that at the beginning of my mission to be able to share scriptures and things like that, just to prepare myself, because I knew that when we got into a lesson, I could read that scripture and be able to do it well to the point that people would understand me, even if I couldn't necessarily express myself very fluently. One thing that was sad is there's a lot of phrases that we have and idioms that don't transfer over to Spanish. So things like, blow them out of the water, holy cow. Although a lot of the gringo missionaries would say Santa Vaca, just because it was funny to us. But yeah, you have to be careful and make sure that what you're saying is actually a phrase in Spanish. Also, don't be afraid to check things with your bishop. If your companion gives you a word that you've never heard of before, don't be afraid to ask your bishop what it means before you start using that publicly. One thing that was interesting with the language is every country kind of has different words that are considered vulgar or bad. And so you'd have missionaries come from Mexico or from Guatemala or Nicaragua, and they come to Honduras, and it was really funny because sometimes an investigator or a member would say a word, and this elder from a different country would just be shocked. And just in Honduras, it doesn't mean the same thing. And so make sure, I remember one time the district leader called me to ask about a convert, and I used a word that I had heard my, one of the members of the ward used, and this elder was just shocked and got mad at me for, picking up vulgar words. And I said, well, I heard it from a member. And he was from Mexico, and apparently in Mexico that was just a horrible word. But in Honduras, not necessarily the best word in Honduras, but it wasn't, the same level. And so make sure when you're picking up new words, make sure you're verifying where those words are coming from and what they actually mean, just because you don't want to be in a situation where you use a word incorrectly. Also, you're going to have an experience where you mess up the words. I remember there was one time we were teaching a Catholic man, and he was asking a lot of really good questions, and it was a great lesson. And this was even halfway through my mission, so I was at the point where I felt like I had a pretty good grasp on Spanish. And I remember he was asking about confession, and so in Spanish he said, "Eldres, ¿qué creen ustedes de la confesión?" And for some reason, I heard, ¿Qué creen ustedes de la concepción? So I thought he was talking about the Immaculate Conception. And that was a very awkward moment because I started to go off into this whole thing about, what we believe about Mary, and just I was talking about conference talks and what people have said, and just kind of, it was, and all of a sudden my companion bumped me. He's like, what are you doing? And I said, well, he asked about, he asked about the conception. And he's like, no, he didn't. He asked about confession. And so you'll have those moments where you just mix up a word and just laugh about it and move on.
Okay, so learning the language was a struggle for me. It was really hard. And I got down on myself, and I was kind of a perfectionist, and I had this big burning testimony inside of me, and I wanted to share it, and I couldn't get the words to get it out right. And so it was a very frustrating experience for me at first, but I learned so much. The people are wonderful, and they will make a lot of comments. Oh, I didn't understand. It was always hard for me for them to turn to my companion. What did she just say? Or what did she mean to say? But that's okay. You learn. It takes time. In the MTC, they're going to really pump you up and get you excited about the gift of tongues. And they'll say, yeah, within 3 months, you'll be speaking perfect, fluent Spanish. That, for me, was not the case. It took me probably 6 months. But what I think really increased my ability to speak Spanish was having more faith in myself and making myself practice. Because I at first preferred to stay quiet. I tried to talk a lot when I first got there because I was so motivated. And then when they just didn't understand me, and it was so hard, I realized really how hard it was to get the language out of my mouth. I got a little bit more quiet and let my companion do the majority. And that was a mistake. The people will understand you even if it's not perfect. If you get some of the vocab words and if you translate the Spanish wrong, or if you do the grammar tense in the wrong past tense, that's okay. It's really, they will love you and they will help you and they'll help you get through it. I had an experience where the sister training leaders were coming to do divisions or splits or whatever they call it with us, and I had to lead the lessons all day long, and I was terrified because I didn't remember how to get to those people's houses, and I didn't know the language, and I just felt so discouraged. And that day I was reading in my scriptures, and I read the story in the New Testament when Peter had the faith to walk on water, and so he walked on the water, and the moment he began to doubt, he drowned. But when he had faith, he could do it. And so I thought to myself, if Peter can walk on the water and has faith to do something that hard, there's no reason I couldn't have a day of speaking good Spanish with people understanding me. So I just said, no, it doesn't matter. I'm here. The Lord has called me here, and I'm going to speak it, and I'm going to have a good day. And I spoke great Spanish that whole day. People understood me. I understood the majority of what they were saying. The sister training leader was so kind to help me fill in the gaps, and it was a really great experience, and I learned that day that I can really speak it. But after that day, I sort of lost motivation again. I was really studying every single day, but I just had a hard time still. So then they took away my amazing Guatemalan trainer, and they sent me a girl from Mapleton, Utah, who I adore, and her Spanish was not perfect either at all. So we'd go, these two little white girls, in this area that hadn't seen American sister missionaries in years. And we would go teach these lessons, and the people just didn't totally understand us. And so we had to figure it out so fast. So by taking away my clutch of using my companion for everything, they just sent me another companion who wasn't perfect. And it was so good for me. And she really was great and taught me that I can speak Spanish and that I could do it and that I just wasn't giving myself the credit I needed to. And she changed my world. She had come at a time where I really was having a hard time adjusting, and so I was really grateful for her to just show me how when you work your butt off as hard as you possibly can, and you have faith and you speak and you do those things, miracles happen, and you learn to really enjoy and love it. So the language, just do language study. It's kind of hard because when I left in November of 2016, the rules were still, you do language study at 1 o'clock every day. But if a member feeds you a lunch, they're never punctual, and so you start eating by 12:45, and so the language study doesn't really happen. You need to make it happen, whether it be at night, whether it be during the day, whether it be taking flashcards around with you. You really need to learn the language and study it. People would always tell me, your grammar is so much, once I got good at Spanish, people would just tell me, your grammar is so much better than other American missionaries that I've met. And it was because I studied those books and I did all the little homework assignments out of them, and it helped me so much. And people will ask you, can you write Spanish and read it too? And I said, yep, that's how I learned, was reading and writing it out of a book. So the book they'll give you in the MTC is so helpful. It's golden. So just make sure you really use that, and that will help you a ton. And just be so optimistic and so faithful, and don't get yourself down, and you'll learn it in no time, and you'll be thinking, wow, I just understood everything, and wow, they just understood me. And it is a great feeling.